Evening all, RaMarcus here. Are we ready? Oculus Connect Day 2. Oh, let's turn that down. Are we ready? We've got 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Then it's time for Oculus Connect Day 2. What will we learn? Can't get into the event just yet. I don't think I've ever seen an event go live, like the button go live. Be interesting to see. How's everyone today? Everyone having a fun day? Do anything interesting? What is it, Thursday? I work from home a lot of the time, so I lose track of the days. Forget what day it is. Anybody checked out the latest releases video that I've done for the Oculus Go? See all the new stuff is? I won't say there's a lot to get excited about, but there's a couple of good things in there. The Low and Echo experience, and then a couple of multiplayer games which could be fun. Need to get together with you guys really and kind of have a little go, see what happens. What was I going to do then? I was going to do something on my phone, I can't remember what it was. Yeah, it does seem odd they're teasing Go with whatever, but I guess with the thing. Can't remember what I was trying to say then. Trying to type live now and I put love now. Live now. Look at that. Back to the Future theme tune stuck in my head now because Nathy put a tweet up with the music in it. It's stuck in my head now. I got my straw today. I couldn't find it yesterday. You know, like Jude the cat. Ooh, I feel like I need some sleep. I kind of feel like I'm going to end up doing another video after this one. The video I put up bloody yesterday, I stayed up doing a video of the Oculus Go and the Quest, and then it got copyright striked for a bit of video, which was one of the trailers for the Quest. So it got banned worldwide. The funny thing is, it also got banned worldwide for the official Oculus video version as well. So it wasn't just mine, they banned everyone's who had that bit of video in it. Filed the dispute, but I ended up just uploading it again. But unfortunately, it had like 2,000 views by the time it got hit. That's most of the traffic, really. 2,000 views is pretty much what I get on my videos. Oh well. How's everyone? I assume it sounds alright. Sounds alright. I'm sure you can hear my laptop, can't you? My laptop's fan is so noisy. I wonder if I like propped it up, it'll be less noisy. Can I stick something under it? Just kind of like a pencil, just kind of raise it up and give it a bit more air, so it might cool down a bit. No, that's not enough, is it? What's this? Got a little tambourine. A kid's tambourine. Yeah, I'm streaming Carmack's bit, so it's the Keynote 2, which is up next. Starts in about 15 minutes, 14 minutes. It's not ready. Oh, it is. It's ready. You can enter now. Enter venue. Let's have a little look, shall we? Oh, it's going to tell us all about it. Oh, we can skip it. Don't be naughty, it's basically going to say. Don't be naughty. Yeah, so we're going to stream it. New avatar item unlocked. So I get a new t-shirt to choose from? Can I get that one? Oh, add and continue. Join crowd. My microphone is active. Hello. Even all. Starting through 30 minutes.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. You should be able to go like your own private little booth with your friends if you want to. Like go solo viewing, you should be able to go like sit up at the back with your friends. Yeah, the Star Wars video didn't give much away at all, really, did it? It was very much a teaser trailer. I mean, technically it's not long until it's out. Wow, okay, I guess is it though? I guess technically it could be 6 months, couldn't it? If it's like late spring. I wonder, can you actually sit on the front row? Oh look, you can sit this close. you don't get anybody snoring in front of you like we did yesterday. You see that? Someone yesterday.
Really?
There was a guy who fell asleep. I kid you not, he fell asleep. His like headset was like this, like his like character was like scoot with, and he was snoring away. It was quite funny.
Yeah.
It was funny. Does it remember? Oh no, it doesn't. I think it's remembered all the settings. Turn event up to max. Chat down a little bit. I think yesterday the overall sort of crowd chatter was getting a bit much. I couldn't concentrate. Ah, got some nice. How you finding the go then, mate? Did you watch many of my videos before you you got it? Transit starts in about 10 minutes, which probably means 15 minutes. It's not going to start in time, surely. I can't swipe this way. Oh no. It's a bit weird that people can like turn to face right at you. That full body turning. Haha. Cannot move. We decided to go with a 2D stream today. Keep it simple. See what happens. So what you say my videos were the deciding factor in going for the PC options of that one? Nice. I think quite a few people have bought Oculus Go's because of my videos. I like to think I'm an ambassador for Oculus Go in particular. Are you having your tea, are you, before you join? You're going to miss all the action though. Surely, you know, Carmack's going to like be jumping on the screen. He's going to be like jumping around, coming in a car that's on fire, shoot some bad guys. All in VR, obviously. What's this person doing?
Yeah, I don't know what you were doing. That's why I was doing that. Kind of confused.
Oh, you're doing the like the dog confused look.
Yeah. I mean, it's the most expressive you can get with these heads.
Well, that's true. Your mouth doesn't even move or anything.
Yeah. I was wondering who you were talking to because it was just like you were all alone.
Oh no, I'm streaming it on YouTube, so I was just talking to the chat.
Right. Oh, right.
It does make me sound like I'm like schizophrenic or something.
Yeah.
Watch out for the maintenance man with a giant torch. Didn't you say something like he came at you or something? I guess on the screens when you were watching earlier. climb up. Let's get over to the back row. Oh yeah. I'm kind of sat on my own area now. Look, it's all empty. Go over there. Let's go down there. I quite like scooting around. Oh. What's that? I just clicked on someone's name, I think. You lost your name. Round 2, Voodoo. Round 2, yeah. This is where they announced that all yesterday was a lie, and they're really just gonna bring out a unicorn version. I can't even think of something funny to say there. I lost that train of thought. Thanks, Lee.
I only bought my Go 2 weeks ago. Oh, right. How are you finding it? I'm still getting my virtual reality legs, actually. Ah, okay. It's a lot of...
I'm like chair jumping. Do they bring around popcorn and Ben & Jerry's? You know they should, shouldn't they? They should give you like virtual Ben & Jerry's. Absolutely. Make that suggestion. You can watch the live stream without VR here. It's gotta be here. It's not gonna be in 3D or anything like it was yesterday. It's getting a bit noisy though. Oh, it's getting a bit noisy. People are so chatty. There we go. I've got my own single seat. Yeah, I know it does freeze. I need to keep an eye on it. Just give me a nudge if the screen freezes. Give me a nudge. I'll try and keep an eye on it. But I like need to like press a button just to get it going again. It's like something to do. I use Visor, a program called Visor, which basically kind of mirrors an Android device to your PC. And it, to be fair, it works really well. But occasionally, it just suddenly like pauses. I don't know whether because it thinks that the focus isn't on it anymore, and it stops. Like something must happen on my PC to kind of change window. If you know what I mean? Like another program takes priority, and then it stops it working. And I mean, all I got to do is like click on a button. And then it starts. Maybe it's best if I sit up here on my own, because then, like yesterday, there's people chatting and it's getting a bit distracting. We can kind of see how many people are here now. Look. You heard menu sounds. Oh, is it starting? Oh. Ooh. Oh, we're gonna get music now. I'm gonna get banned. Right, I turn the music down, just in case it's copyrighted stuff and I get like copyright strike. yeah, four cameras and USB-C charging. Yeah, so USB-C charging should be good because that technically puts out more power, which is only a good thing really. Because if the headset's going to draw more power, you might potential that is there to want to use the headset more plugged in technically. You know what I mean? For like extended sessions, more so that maybe like you could put yourself like a USB pack on your hip or something. You know, could keep going for hours. Yeah, there's too many noisy ones. I had to mute a guy who was snoring yesterday. Yeah, he was literally like in the chair in front of me, just snoring away. I had to mute him. I had to jump over and like click on him to mute him. But anybody who doesn't know, this is Oculus Venues. So all these people down here, well, you can see in front of me, they're all real people. But they're other people with an Oculus Go or Gear VR, I guess, who've joined via the app and getting ready to watch this event. And this kind of happens like with lots of things like films and sports and NBA games and all sorts. Evening, Zip-On. How's it going, mate? So this is quite a nice little app. I guess the only downside is that, you know, the Oculus Go technically probably doesn't last as long without a charger as a lot of the content that gets played. Most films are too long. I'll try and keep the stream going. As I say, there are ways of kind of going in via ADB and not hacking into it, but using scripting and stuff that and I'm just going to go dial straight in and screen capture. But this is just easier. I'll be honest, I'm lazy when it comes to this sort of thing. If it works, I'm happy with it. There's no need faffing around with it, making it more complicated. But I think the Saw movies are coming soon, aren't they? Impressed with the quality, better than the. Was it on the Rift? I mean, I'll be honest, I wasn't big into VR this time last year. I would probably say I'm not super new to VR, obviously, but it was a kind of passing interest sort of this time last year. Just had sort of Gear VR and stuff like that, but then obviously this year I got myself a Rift, I got myself a Go, I'll get myself a Quest. I'll stay in the Oculus line, I guess. But what did they have? What did they have, like a video or something? Ah, it's good to hear Zip-On. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm absolutely dandy. People should come sit right down in front of me. Look, come sit there. Loads of issues. Oh, that's a shame. Because yeah, I mean, yesterday, I think I had a few stutters and stuff, but I think that was more because I was streaming at the same time. So, you know, that kind of makes sense. You know, I'm kind of pushing it on it, really. So kind of imagine it to lag a little bit. What time is it? It must be time for it to start by now. 5% battery on, yeah. 6 o'clock, should be starting. Oh, just as he says, look. Ooh. Can we see any of the VR guys that we know? I can't see any of the. It's too dark out there. If you guys can see properly, it's not too dark. But this kind of makes it feel, doesn't it, like you're in like a concert or something. It's quite convincing. I think it's really good. I guess in theory you only really need one camera, you know, just to give you that view, and then you just, you know, you just feel like you're there. I guess they obviously make it go in and out and swap cameras and all sorts. I mean, look at the size of that TV screen down there. That monitor. That's a monitor, isn't it, on the right hand side there? Are they laptops and that's like a TV monitor? I wonder. You can't see close enough. I don't think even if I went down the front I'd see properly. Eric's going to walk past and wave at the camera. He better then. We'll wait for it. Oh, here you go. John Carmack! Woo! Hey, John! You sexy beast!
All right, so I've been told that we're not doing live Q&A here, but after this, I'm just walking out onto the floor, so anybody that has any questions, I'll be there the rest of the day. You can come up and we'll get some answers. So I'm almost an explicit counterpoint to a lot of the long-term visionary talk that happens, and it's not that it isn't important. A lot of people find a lot of great motivation from it, and some things do need long-term commitment. I am really happy that Facebook does have this long-term commitment to research and development of new technologies. But in some ways, a long-term vision can be a rug that you sweep your current shortcomings under. If you're not concentrating on what's right in front of you all of the time, it can be an issue. So I try to be constantly critical. And Michael Abrash and I just serve fundamentally different purposes inside this company. And, at our last big company offsite, where there was lots of talk about strategy and vision and what we were doing, I kind of grumpily went back to my hotel room and I pulled out my Go and I started making a list of 100 things wrong with our software right now. And
nice.
I eventually came to my senses and realized that wasn't going to be a great thing to just dump in one of our internal groups. And I wound up kind of distilling it down to something that I've tried over 20 different ways that we demonstrate focus in VR just in our first-party apps. When you move the cursor onto something in an application, does it highlight? Does it change the border around it? Does it underline? Does it bold? Does it change the background color? Does it grow wings around it? All of these other possible things. And that's crazy. We've explored practically every nook and cranny of the solution space all at one time. And, why does store look like this and gallery look like that? And some of it's from messy evolution. Some of these things are 4 years old in evolution, the way they've come up from the original Gear VR Innovator Edition. But some of it's also that we've committed the sin of kind of shipping the org chart, different teams without a whole lot of collaboration between them. And these are things that I fret about quite a bit, and they're mundane things. And, maybe they're not the most important thing, but I think that fixing individual little things like this is how you wind up.
I think local
hill climbing to just have better quality, better features is the best path to success. Now, over the weekend, I went back and watched my OC4 keynote again. And honestly, there's several things that I talked about that I don't give us a very good grade at following up on. But I am happy to say that what I thought was the most important topic of discussion, which was shipping Oculus Go, turned out really well. And I like Go a lot, but more importantly, our users really like it also. And one of the things that's kind of remarkable here is Gear VR has shipped an incredible number of units. It's kind of by far the most successful VR headset, but it hasn't really been a very sticky product where people get it, they try some applications, they give it a good review and they like it, but generally they drift away after not too terribly long. Maybe they bring it back out for family get-togethers to show off, to show a few people VR that haven't seen it before. But on the other hand, Rift is very retentive. People come back to Rift week after week, and they spend a lot of time in it. Now, I was probably the most optimistic inside Oculus about how well Go would do. But it turned out that it exceeded even my expectations. The remarkable point is, Go is retaining as well as Rift. And that's pretty shocking. Nobody predicted that. And it's not clear that we know exactly why. There's a lot of theories that we have about why the experience is so different.
No, it's not.
But the content you're interacting with is pretty close to the same things that you had on the Gear VR experience. There's some things that are definitely better with Go, where it's a little bit more comfortable, the screen's a little bit higher resolution, the optics are a bit better. Maybe things at the margin just add up. Maybe the 72 frames per second display lets more people that just couldn't stand the flicker of 60 work on some of the applications, but there aren't that many applications that actually run it at 72. We used to theorize that maybe overheats on the older phones were a really terrible thing that drove people away, but the newer Samsung phones are quite a bit more powerful than Go, and they don't really overheat, so that's probably not a killer issue.
It's always just draining my battery.
Realized later that
I valued my phone battery.
Overheat the phone, it's probably because they're having a great time and they've been playing for a while, so that's not driving them away. We do think that there are aspects of kind of poisonous user experiences that happen that kind of kick people out of the platform, where most people have probably had the experience with the Gear VR, you haven't used it in a while, you say, oh, I'm going to try something in Gear VR. And you plug it into get out the phone, dock it there, and then it says, oh, you need to undock for some update. You take it out, and that kind of kills the experience there. Where if you're doing it every day, it's just part of the process there. But if that was, you had just tipped over into wanting to get back into VR, and then
you do zip on, yeah, you need a Facebook account.
Experience, that's a bad thing. There's still cases where the user experience degrades a bit when you're downloading at the same time and it starts stuttering or having other problems. So maybe these are the poisonous things that drive people off. There's also theories that just people worry about draining their phone battery, that their phone that they rely on for their daily life, that they don't want to go ahead and pull half the charge out of it.
That's the main reason I didn't use Gear VR that much.
That might be something.
Valued my phone battery too much.
Whatever the causes, the Go users are behaving very differently than the Gear VR users. Demographically, no huge surprises. We are strongest with somewhat older people, still very male-dominated. The one shock was how well we've done in Japan, where we are not catering to the Japanese market. We don't have great internationalization for Japanese in the different areas, but something about Go has really struck a nerve in the Japanese market consciousness, and so we're still not quite sure what we can actually do about that, given all of our kind of structural inertia on things, but that was an interesting data point. There's some bright spots that we hear from like teenagers, that people that have, in some ways, more limited freedom. I could say that virtual reality has more to offer them when you don't have a lot of control necessarily in your life. The ability to go do things in your own virtual world is pretty exciting, and there's some interesting possibilities as we look at lower and lower potential price points in other areas of the world. I would say that probably one of the reasons for the Japanese success is the density of population. When you are in a small area, being able to open up a large virtual world is pretty
zip on, you can watch it here with me, mate.
So the things that we've done really well with Go, the convenience, I think, of standalone is the number one most important thing. The $199 price point is really important psychologically, although it's noteworthy that the more expensive 64 gig version actually is more popular and more units of that get sold.
Oh, interesting.
The audio was there by default. It's more convenient than the flip-down Rift headphones. And I definitely gave a big thank you to the team that worked that out, because I think it's one of Go's really great innovations. The better thermals is something that we don't really overheat. The only time I've ever overheated a Go is when I had a rogue thread running that didn't shut down, and I put it face down on my desk so that the whole front surface plate really couldn't dissipate any heat. And I do think it was kind of a neat piece of industrial design, the whole metal front plate that serves the important thermal dissipation role, but it also, I think, gives it a nice quality feel to the product. One of the things that was a late addition that was well after Oculus Connect last year is the addition of the 72 frames per second video, where we found out fairly early on that we had some margin for raising the refresh rate. And the reasons you want to do this are because 60 frames per second is flickery for some people. It varies from person to person, but for some people it's almost unwatchable, and some people hardly notice it. But the other point for 72 precisely is that it's 3 times the standard 24 frames per second movie rate. So a lot of things on Netflix or in the movie theater have a smoother release rate when you can kind of exactly hit that number. Now, that was a bit of a struggle internally, because the displays are specified. They've got specs for different ranges of conditions, and the hardware engineers are much more conservative than software engineers, where as a software engineer, I'm likely to just say, well, let's just see what happens, and that just kind of sends shivers down the spines of a lot of the hardware people. So we did a lot of testing with it, and there are some edge cases where the issue with LCD displays is that they're temperature sensitive, so the cooler it is, the slower the LCDs kind of change state from one state to another. And if you left a Go out in a car in Wisconsin in the winter and then brought it into your house and turned it on, you are very likely going to see multiple ghosts on the screen, as it's incapable of changing completely from one state to another. But in most normal cases, inside houses, it works fine. And in fact, we've got a little bit more margin. It would be possible for us to raise it a little more, but I don't think there's any sweet spots kind of above that, where we can't go all the way to 120 hertz, and the difference between 72 hertz and 80, it would be worse for the video cases, and I think the fraction of people that makes a critical difference for would be really small, and it would be a lot more power drain to be rendering that much faster. So the another thing that was ready by the end was the foveated rendering extension. And this is another great example of how having everything in-house was a huge win for us, where multi-view rendering I had been talking about probably as an idea at OC1 and then again at 2, 3, and 4. And it took us over 2 years to get that through, from the time that here's the plan, here's the extension, to the point where developers could really rely on it. And that was just because of these structural issues where Qualcomm and ARM had to both develop the extensions, work them out, bicker about how to do the different cases where it's better for one platform or the other. Samsung has to pick that up, get it into their next release. Then it has to go to all the carriers, and they have to decide when they're going to allow that to go to their customers. And it was pretty miserable. I mean, that was a real learning experience for me, that it could take that long. In contrast, the foveated rendering extension was something that we did directly with Qualcomm, since there's only one chipset in the Go. And we worked it out, we got it in there, our OS team integrated it, and it shipped, and everything worked great. And that was a solid little performance improvement. It's not huge, but it's 15% or so in many cases. And in a lot of cases, that's the difference that allowed you to go ahead and run at 72 frames per second instead of 60. But there are a bunch of things that I'm not super happy with Go. Like the split back strap on Go was intended to support different hairstyles. There are people that the standard over-the-back strip just didn't work very well for, and so splitting like that would allow a bun or whatever to fit through in between. But what we wound up doing is unloading the top strap. So if the top strap is connected to the over-the-head strap is connected to the top part of the split, it just lifts up and down, and it can't take much of the weight from that. And I've seen some people actually pulling the strap all the way down to the bottom one so you can get it behind your head. And I don't think we hit the right thing with that. You can actually take a Gear VR strap and with a little bit of scissor work on it, get it to fit inside a Go and have the conventional one back strap. And also on that note, the facial interface, the bottom of it extends kind of below the plastic part, which is somewhat important on the side on the cheeks, but it's not a good thing around your nose, where if it's depending on where it's sitting on your face, it might actually be reflecting some of your breath back at you. And that's another thing. I pulled off the facial interface and take the scissors to it, cut around the nose there. That's a slight modification. Right around that same area, one of the things that I complained immediately when I saw the prototypes of Go was the amount of light leakage around the nose, where it was basically a rift design.
I don't know, I can't like that.
I really like the fact that VR has very tight light leakage and very little light leakage around there. You can immerse yourself pretty fully, while with Rift or Go's spaced around the nose, you can kind of see all the light down there. You can move your hand and see it like that. And for a truly immersive experience, like if you had that in something like the Void, that would completely destroy the experience. But I've been pretty surprised to see a lot of our user studies, people coming back, and so many people think that was the intentional design to let you kind of peek at your hand and peek at different things.
And I
may be coming around to that being maybe a wash. It hurts on the immersion, but a lot of people do like that little bit of extra being able to see through there. One of our things that has clearly failed in a lot of ways is the proximity sensor, where the idea with the standalone is you pick it up, you put it on your head, and you're magically into VR immediately. But we had so many problems with the straps on the back, the very soft straps falling down into the face of that, where that becomes it triggers the prox sensor, and we've got all these heuristics skeptics about, well, even though the proc sensor's triggered, it hasn't moved in this long, we think it's idle, we'll turn it off so the battery doesn't run down. But it also means then a lot of times you pick it up and you do have to manually hit the power switch. And it's in almost a worst case scenario now where you have to worry about it not doing it when you set it down and running down your battery a little bit, or not immediately coming up when you put it on. So we're probably going to be putting in a setting option for this, where a setting that lets you just say ignore the proc sensor, require the power button to be pressed, which is one of the things that a lot of people in business and location-based systems really want. They want people to not have to worry about that, and also the recenter dialogue, where a lot of installations want to basically have, here, put this headset on and see our movie, our 360 immersive media, whatever, and we add those two settings, and you can say turn off the proximity sensor and turn off the recenter dialogue. Then you can write software that does just on-mount, restart it, do simple things like that. And that should be a really useful thing.
Okay.
Now, since we shipped Go, we've already had a number of improvements. We shipped big new apps with venues and TV. One of the things that got announced at the Keynote yesterday, that it's kind of a geeky detour on this, but I'm super proud of the way the new chromatic aberration correction stuff got worked out.
That's a good idea.
That we had chromatic aberration correction on the very first Gear VR. It was an option you could set on the flags, and we set it on a number of our early applications, but as we were moving to the later phones, we turned it off of most things because it was a power issue, and it did make things a little bit slower, and we had some tearing issues and all this. So for the most part on Gear VR, where the optics got pretty blurry quickly away from the center, where chromatic aberration starts really showing up, I thought it was a fair trade to just leave it off, get the performance and battery life. But we were a little bit taken aback when the early Go reviews and some of the press reviews started coming in, and people were talking about the chromatic aberration that was visible.
I'm hitting up the top door in the middle room. Oh, loading.
On top of it, but it had to have the colors.
Oh no, it's loading. It's not loading. Need to know about chromatic aberration.
So you would wind up, like you could turn it on browser and the text would then look better, but you would have an even worse chromatic aberration artifact at the edges where it faded out because it couldn't properly blend them together. Now there's obviously ways to fix this. Qualcomm has an extension called frame buffer fetch, where you could go ahead and read the frame buffer and do the blending in your fragment shader, and that worked, but it was hideously slow. They had another extension on top of that, non-coherent frame buffer fetch, which made it faster because we knew we weren't overlapping things that we were drawing, but it was still like 3 milliseconds, which was way too much for this. And the way Rift does chromatic aberration correction is it composites everything together, ignoring that, then it corrects it to another buffer with a full read. I could do that on the mobile systems, but that turned out to be 4 milliseconds of time, a quarter of your frame time just to do that like this. Because the mobile are especially hurt by these high bandwidth memory operations, like reading the whole 32-bit uncompressed and writing it back out. Now, there were a few more last-ditch things we could have done. There's another thing the hardware could have done called Blend Func Extended, but I eventually had an idea that seemed potentially interesting, and that was there's a whole section of silicon on these chips that we don't use for much of anything at all. That's the display processing unit that does all the upscaling of videos and compositing things over for wallpapers and all the normal things that 2D phones do to keep from having the GPU do it. And I thought that, it can do stretching of different things. If we wrote out a separate red, green, and blue image, it could stretch the red a little, stretch the blue a little, and leave the green the same, put them all together, and it would work great. But unfortunately, writing out all three of those different ones from the GPU was so much memory overhead that was also 3 or 4 milliseconds completely unusable. But what I thought is, if there was some way that we could just write out our normal thing, pretending like we were not doing CAC at all, and then if the DPU could be configured somehow, waving hands madly, to take one channel from here, and one channel from there, and one channel from this as 3 separate windows, point 3 windows at this, and mux it up somehow, that that could then magically fix everything. Now, of course, it doesn't do this in the spec. The spec for the hardware and composer from Android doesn't require anything like that. But I got with the Qualcomm people that we worked very closely with.
Yeah, I've heard the Facebook stream is not very good.
And said, this would be great if
I don't think it was good yesterday either.
Could you maybe give me all of the low-level register specs on this, and let me just see if I could come up with anything that could work. And they didn't wind up giving me all the register specs of it, but they did wind up basically going down the hall to the guys that built the DPU and said, is there any way to get this working? And it turned out there was. Completely undocumented hardware that's not used for anything else, but they're possible to set the muxes this different way, and then all of a sudden we've got the ability to do this. So we now have the ability to have the GPU pretend chromatic aberration doesn't exist, and this whole separate part of silicon on the chip magically solves this for us. Now, it still does have some memory bandwidth overhead because it's reading the buffer 3 times, but it's not writing back out to it. So it doesn't cost anything on performance, really, but it does cost a little bit on battery. And the initial plan was that we were going to A/B test this. It's a couple percent. But everybody that's been using this for a while has just been really clear. This is absolutely worth it. So I think the plan now is that we are just going to roll it out directly to everybody. But that ties in with another feature that we're going to be getting as a setting that's been requested as a low power mode. A mode, a way that we can stretch the battery a little bit more on Go. But the things that we're going to be doing on that are forcing the chromatic aberration off, forcing it to a 30 hertz 3D rendering update. And also, we're probably going to wind up putting the display brightness down as well, and also turning it to 60 frames per second. So it's basically turning it more like into a previous generation Gear VR. And this will get you, so maybe it'll be another 15 minutes of video time or something. People would really only do this if you're going to be sitting back watching a video, not interacting too much.
Slightly longer films.
Another broadly requested feature is USB storage, some way to extend storage from the Go. And it's a little bit of a mixed bag on this, where it turns out we do have some hardware limitations and there's some software licensing issues, so this is not the ideal feature that we might want to have, but we are going to wind up releasing this so that you can plug in little micro USBs. It's limited to FAT32 support, so you're limited to 4 gig file, so you can format it still for very large drives. But we do have a hardware problem that we have no workaround for, where at low battery levels, sometimes plugging in the USB, we can't mount it correctly, and it's just, it's not a perfect feature, but I think it's still worthwhile shipping to users, because a lot of people will like this.
Yeah, people have been asking for ages.
It's surprising how much power those little USB keys can draw out of the main battery, so it does take a fair bit of battery away. Night mode is another little feature that somebody suggested. I prototyped it that day, and we're still just kind of waiting for a setting to make its way through all of our UI to get that out to users.
A night mode.
One of the most exciting features is the casting that was talked about on the keynote, and everybody knows the problem of trying to give demos from a Gear VR previously or a Go, where you're kind of guessing what the person is looking at, trying to tell them. It's like, no, that thing down on the bottom, look over there, press this button. And it's difficult to run somebody through a demo. And then, of course, it's the whole isolating aspect of it. And when the mirroring to your phone really does change that. It's remarkable. I had the experience recently just showing my kids Thumper for the first time, and watching on my phone while they were going through it and giving them a little bit of coaching tips there really did change the experience. So I think this is going to be a really big win for us. Now, there's some other things that I'm thinking about as possible futures, like possibly the ability to make your phone act as a controller for those times when you forgot the Go controller somewhere else, which I've done and had to drive back to another house to go get it to be able to make a demo at some point. Being able to just use your phone as a surrogate controller, or possibly even as a surrogate joypad, which would then unlock a lot of the joypad games, is interesting.
Keep hearing Windows
noises. One of the features that I think I've come around on is we have this notion of bed mode, which started in like Netflix having the void theater, and void theater, you could move the screen around. And we generalized that a little bit inside Shell, so we gave you the stable environment, but you could put any panel looking anywhere you want. And this does turn out to be really one of the superpowers of VR. I mean, it seems very kind of mundane, but just being able to put screens at orientations that you can't do with physical objects in the real world in most cases is really powerful. But then everybody says, well, I want this for, for all of my applications. And I have fought against this for years in that I remember in my early days of VR experimentation, if you have the world 20 degrees off in a vertical, it's extraordinarily discomforting, and you move through that and the world is all tilted, and I just figured that was one of the worst things we could do for comfort. But it does turn out we have a lot of apps that don't involve moving through the world, or at least looking around and navigating. And an argument could be made that all of those video or media applications that don't implement Avoid Theater mode explicitly on their own might be better off being able to just reset the vertical directly. And I took I did an experiment with a random recentering, and I played a game that doesn't require looking around. I played Smash Hit for a while, just plowing through while I was on the floor looking up at the ceiling, and that worked fine. It was okay, but when I experimented with some other apps that had a real sense of a world with a vertical and you're looking around a little bit, I did feel a little bit odd after when I came out of VR and the reference was changed. So we have not run this all through complete user testing, but people have been asking for this for years, and I think my position is softening on it as maybe a net value. And recentering brings up one of the points where we did come around to basically doing what Daydream does with recentering. I think they made the right call in retrospect, where the recenter operation by default recenters not just your controller, but also your view, unless the application explicitly opts out. We had long debates about this, but I think that is the right call in the end. And there's a couple other little things that we've cribbed from Daydream. I added a little thumbprint on the controller that they do. I try to every time I kind of take a hint from them, I try to do it a little bit better. I've got a really nice cursor trails with Bezier quadratic Bezier curves on it that I'm waiting for, again, another setting to turn on. This is a theme for this, where I've got all these things where they're gated on UI in many cases right now. We're trying to make this a priority to make it easier to get some of these little things in. But I think that one of the really gratifying things to me is that the problems that people have with Go right now, they tend to be real-world problems rather than kind of VR geek problems. It's like the battery doesn't last long enough, or it doesn't charge fast enough. Not, how do I do an expressive emote from my avatar inside a VR application? These are the same types of things that people complain about every application, or every kind of piece of consumer electronics. So, and that does, we did not have a really clear strategy at Go launch for exactly what Go was supposed to be, who it was supposed to be for, and we have crystallized that a lot more now, where Go is our device that is 80% media, 20% gaming. Quest, on the other hand, is exactly the opposite. 80% gaming, 20% media. And there's good reasons why things are slightly different between these. For the media case, like with the bed mode and putting things on the ceiling, it turns out that screens are really, this is what we do with almost everything during our days. I've said there's over $1 trillion that's been put into media that we watch on screens, the things we watch on movie theaters, TV screens, phones, computers, tablets, all of these different devices. So it's crazy to think that those aren't also going to be important inside VR. And making changes and strategic decisions around implementations around that is, I think, a viable direction. And as almost sort of a response to some of the visionary stuff, I did make one vision pitch internally where I'd say that all that we really need here is screens and people. If all that VR did, and it can do so much more, but if all that it did was make amazing screens and allowed you to be co-present with other people while doing that, that would be an enormous value for the world. We could be providing value with that while we're slowly growing these brand new immersive class of applications that don't have precedence before. There's so many things that you can't do with that. Obviously, everybody likes the giant screens in there. They like being able to put them bed mode up on, on the ceiling. in theory, we can do things like this can be more ergonomic. Like whenever I see people hunched over laptops or tablets working, that's not the best way to be working. You want to have a nice upright posture looking at things. We can make the screens at a distance where your eyes converge at them naturally rather than a forced focus direction. Now, obviously, we don't have the resolution that we would like for this today. It can't replace a 4K monitor or my 3 30-inch monitors that you have at the desktop. But we're not as far off as I thought we might be for being able to replace a lot of these other things. Clearly, people are watching a lot of TV and movies in the system right now. I'll talk about it later. One of the other major projects that I did this last year was really attacking the virtual desktop approach, and that turned out better than I expected, and there were some good learnings from that. But so if we were to take some of these strategic directions and thinkings and were to design a next generation Go, the trade-offs are kind of interesting to think about relative to what we do on Quest and different things. Obviously, the top one is better battery life. Now, you can get that from literally having a bigger battery or a battery of a higher spec, or we can get it by having more advanced silicon that's more power efficient, writing better code, doing lots of things, cutting the bloat out of it. But also faster charging. It's great to hear that people have a device that they're upset that they've used Go earlier and it's not fully charged up because they want to use it again. That's a good problem to have.
True.
Comfort, we can still make very large strides on. I don't think that we as a company have really taken that as a top-line priority. It's all been about packing the technology in and somehow wrapping a comfortable shape around that technology. But if we start getting to a point where we're willing to sacrifice some technology in some cases in the name of comfort, for a lot of people, that's going to be the right trade-off. I still think that there are exciting things with ultra-lightweight displays, and it's great to see people physically hacking with Go's. It's a good platform for that because it's mostly self-contained there. You can carve away plastic, and there's some great stuff that people have done, making more comfortable, like changing it to halo straps, cutting away a lot of the weight.
You broke it yesterday, didn't you?
Kind of exciting things, and I've been chastising some of our internal teams. It's like, get with the program, or some guy in a garage is going to outdo us on the important comfort metrics. Obviously, more storage internally, so you can store more videos, although USB helps, certainly fixing the problem so it works across the board reliably. But very interesting to come to questions about 6 degree of freedom tracking, 4K displays, really good tracked controllers. These are all pure goods if they don't have costs, but they do have costs. They trade off in power draw, in expense for the product, development time on some of these things. So it's not completely clear. I think that one of the problems that people do have with Go is, of course, controller drift. The recentering, that is a completely unnatural action for people to have to do. It's a failure of the product that the controller does not stay pointing the way your hand is pointing. That may be actually one of the stronger reasons, even if somebody does nothing but sit in Netflix with an application like this, having the controller always there instead of coming back an hour later and it's off screen and you need to remember to recenter to bring it in front of you. That's a good argument for having cameras and some kind of tracking, as well as, of course, the thing that if you're used to VR, you just kind of sit there and let the head model do its work, but somebody else is there, they're like, oh, I'm in this ski lodge, I'm going to lean forward and look at that magazine, and that's incredibly uncomfortable when you don't have 6 degree of freedom tracking. Resolution-wise, honestly, by this point, I expected us to have 4K displays, but the phone industry made the surprisingly rational choice that 4K displays don't actually matter in that form factor for anything. I expected specsmanship and the kind of warfare there to carry it over well past the point of rationality, but it turned out not to be the case. But still, so VR companies are going to have to foot the bill for this next generation of display density increases, and they're in the pipeline. It'll be interesting to see exactly which products they wind up landing in. Then another thing with cameras is hand tracking. Do we want the controller at all if all you're doing is selecting movies and a few different things like this? But hand tracking has significant computational costs as well. Then you get into some of the ones that become almost Go specific, like the idea of you want an ambient light sensor so that we can tell that you're using it in a dark room and you don't want the screen blasting you. because it turns out that's a real-world use case. A lot of people, in our user studies, we've had people that say, yes, I use my Go when I'm sitting in bed, my wife is asleep, and I want to browse the web or something without disturbing me. And that's something that is an unusual, it's not something we expected as the common use case, but people are actually doing that. Another one like sunburn protection. It is an issue that if you take a Go, nice flat face, you set it down on a picnic table.
Yeah, I think it's mostly technical stuff now.
Blow out of the way, the sun shines down, and you've basically burned a hole in your LCD screen. And we have warnings about this, and we've strengthened these warnings, but it is happening to people. This is something that if you use this device as a part of your life, you're carrying it around, you're setting it down in places, even setting it down by a window with the sun streaming straight in can be a problem. There's technical fixes that we could do for this. People have proposed putting an LCD layer that could darken on top of this. Maybe it doesn't matter, though, the front face shouldn't be flat, so you're not ever inclined to set it down like that. There's other possibilities. But so Go was originally a side project. Quest was started before Go existed, and we had this notion that, it'll just be like a Gear VR, and it'll be easy. And of course it wasn't, and it was an enormous amount of work, and we didn't ship it when we initially hoped we would. But I'm still very happy that we did that. But most of the focus now has switched over to getting Quest out the door.
No, don't forget the Go.
Quest is the VR device that people dreamed about. It's the standalone 6-degree freedom tracked with the hand presence on the controllers, and it does all of this like people want. But it's twice the price of Go. There's a lot more stuff there. It's a heavier headset, and we haven't had time to feed back in most of the learnings that we had from Go, because these projects were all kind of going simultaneously. One thing that did come back in, we learned some from the Go facial interface work that Quest is adopting. Kind of earlier ones were less comfortable than the later ones that have come out. But the real bet on this is that the 6-degree freedom tracked headset and controllers, the kind of Rift parity on this, is a magical point for people, that this is something that's going to radically change things. Now, when we were originally making this call, this was before Go even existed, and we had no sense that the mobile form factor in Go could even reach the levels of retention that we did hit. The only thing that we knew worked was Rift. And the idea was, we're going to bring the qualities that we think are important from Rift down to mobile. There are things that, if we were kind of from scratch right now, we would probably do different with this focus, where if we knew this was 80% gaming, 20% media, like one of the important things on Go is that we knew this lying down prone position for Void Theater was important, so a soft backstrap was really important. Ideally, we'd love to be able to chuck some weight back there. Like the very first Santa Cruz showing that we had a couple of years ago, all of the compute was in the back of it, and it was nicely balanced with that, but you had this big lump back there. There was no way you could lean back on things, and there were problems with the cables and all that. But that is an argument that somebody could make, where you're saying this is a gaming-oriented device. We want people bobbing and weaving around for that. Loading something onto the back of the headset in the future probably does make some good sense. But getting 6-degree freedom tracking is going to unlock VR for a good segment of people, where we still don't have rigorous numbers about what fraction of the population can't tolerate 3-DoF tracking that really does need that. But we know they exist. There's people inside Facebook, and Oculus even, that I get immediately sick when I use Go after a very little amount of time. Just, they move their head in a certain way, it's sitting on their face in a certain way. Those people should generally be able to wear a Quest, because it will respond properly, unless they're in experiences like 360 videos where you don't have any response from the tracking. But if it turns out, like the best case, the home run scenario on this is that we carry over all of the goodness of the Rift experiences, all of the convenience of Go, kind of bring it all together, bring in the people that could never use the mobile experiences before, and that could be really great. But on the other hand, we know 6-DoF alone isn't magic, because the Lenovo Solo it has competent 6-DoF tracking. We think ours is better. We think you can test it and find out different ways that they perform differently, but it functions. And and that has not seemed to be a magic bullet for them to be able to to reach tons of people. So is it the controllers that are going to be magic? Is it going to be
it's going to cost like 700 quid
that we can bring over from the Rift? You know, we really don't know yet. Now, one point that I don't think has been really clearly stated is that Quest is being presented as a more premium product. Obviously, it costs more, it costs twice as much, but that does mean that the curation at the store is going to be more rigorous. So the people that have been having trouble with the Gear or Go stores should steer clear of development on Quest. Now, I'm often sort of the first line of customer support sometimes on Twitter, and I have fielded several times when disgruntled developers say it's like, you know, the store rejected my application, or they dropped this. And they're upset for various reasons, and I will usually get keys from them, and I will look at their application. And so far, every time I have come back and said, well, I understand, but the store probably did make the right decision, where your application here is not kind of additive to the entire store ecosystem. And I try to offer some constructive criticism about, you know, how you could possibly bring it to a high enough level to kind of get over the bar and get into the store. And it is something that I'm frustrated with, but I understand why it is the way it is, that our store ingestion team can't really give that same feedback. I'm in a position where I can do my app reviews, I can do my public app critiques, I can give people this kind of one-off feedback, and it's generally taken, you know, fairly well. I mean, I'm spending my time to try to help you out, and everybody gets it. But our store team generally doesn't feel that they've got a position where they can say, no, this app does all of these things wrong, therefore we're rejecting it, because we know from other people and other ecosystems that have done things like this that what happens is the developer comes back and says, well, I did A, B, C, and D just like you told me to, put it in the store now, and then they get told, well, it's still not good enough. And that can be a kind of toxic
situation
where it winds up with people railing on the internet.
Go on, name some names.
Not
Go on.
good for anybody.
Name some names.
I still hold out hope that we could get some kind of a basic checklist where everybody could say, this is not, you don't get in if you do these, but you definitely don't get in if you don't do these, because there are still a large fraction of the apps that I think just miss some of these checkbox items, these things that should be just nobody even gets. You don't even get considered if you don't have 4X MSAA turned on today, and sometimes we still do kind of let things slip like that. Now, the magical play experience of room scale or arena scale or world scale, I mean, all of this freedom here is incredibly amazing. Just last night, after it's like 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening, somebody was showing me something that had been built in Quill that was like a 20-foot by 30-foot section, this giant sketch. And we were down the lower level of the conference and convention center. Nobody was around, just sketched out a giant guardian thing and put me inside it. I walked over to another room, walked back, got down on my hands and knees and crawled through a crawlway into another room, you know, looked up inside this aquarium, and this is amazing. You know, this is the magic of VR. This is kind of what people imagine doing. But the reality is, very rarely do you have this 20 by 30 foot open space that you can take advantage of experiences like this in. And you know, I chuckle whenever we have our promotional stuff where you have people, you know, athletic people swinging around wildly and ducking and bending with VR, where that's not going to be the reality of the way people are using this product most of the time. And you know, making company strategic decisions around your development around that might not be the wisest thing, where it's going to be a niche thing. Now, one direction one way of thinking about things that I saw somebody start talking about this year was that a lot of VR rides are like amusement park rides. They're like a roller coaster. And the classic VR things, the bending and diving and chucking things, that is in some ways like this experience that people go to, and it's exciting, but you don't necessarily want to be doing that every day or even every week. And that's why, while we say 80-20 split gaming media, I'm pretty much telling people, don't be surprised when people still wind up watching a lot of movies and TV shows inside this, and it's more than 20%. I had said before how, at the very start of Oculus, I had bet someone else that it's going to be more than 50% of the time not in games. and I've been smug about winning that decisively for a while. But a new data point that came out about a year ago that I was pretty shocked about was that even game consoles, like you take a PS4, average users spend about half their time watching movies and things, using that as their set-top box replacement or their DVD player, Blu-ray player. So while gaming is the kind of boutique, it's the marquee thing. It's the thing that brings people in and they will make a decision one way or the other. But a lot of the mundane stuff does wind up eating up a lot of the time that people wind up spending there.
Absolutely.
And then I do worry that in many ways it does come down to people tend towards a little bit of laziness and inaction. I mean, this is what gave us the couch potato and all of this. And while VR can be touted as the antidote to the couch potato, it gets up, makes you active. I talked to somebody here yesterday that was very involved in basically fitness VR stuff. And first I was like,
oh, loading again.
Mind is that most games on that generation.
Oh, another load.
Rendered a 1280 by 720 view at 30 frames per second, and most of them did not have their good anti-aliasing. While in VR, we're hoping that you can render at 1280 by 1280 twice for stereo and 72 frames per second, which is 8.5 times more pixels than you would have on an old 360 game. Plus, you want to be in 4x MSAA and trilinear filtering, which are some percentages additional on top of that. So it is not possible to take a game that was done at a high quality level, like a AAA title for that generation, and expect it to look like that in VR. It's too many more pixels to wind up rendering. On the upside, we do have far more texture memory and far more main memory in general than you had on those platforms. So some of the development can be easier, and in many cases you can trade really rich textures for complex shaders and multi-pass rendering in different ways. And essentially, realistically, we are going to wind up competing with the Nintendo Switch as a device where I don't think there's going to be that many people that say, I'm not going to buy a PS4, I'm going to buy a Quest instead. I think we're going to have people that, like, I'm a gamer, I've got my brand of choice for the main console, I've maybe got a PC that I play games on, I'm going to pick up a Quest as a mobile device, very much like the Switch is right now. So I do stand by the statement that I've made that the core magic of any Rift experience can be brought to this, but you can't ignore the level of processing power differences. Well, I'd say it's a big high-end PC can use up to 500 watts of power, and something like this is earning 5-something, a little bit more. There's almost a factor of 100 difference in the total power. But really, in any game, you're only generally concentrating on a half dozen or so things. There's some psychology behind how many things your mind can focus on. And while there are some games and experiences that needs thousands of something for its aesthetic, that's not the thing that's going to work well on Quest. But when you've got something, here I am moving in an environment, these other things are moving, my hands are tracked here, I'm performing actions at some rate, all of that can come through. But it may need a different programming style than what's been necessary or possible on the PC. Where outside of AAA productions, PC development is really pretty nice right now. You've got so much power kind of to burn and at your disposal that you don't have to be hardcore hotshot technical programmer to do an amazing game that people love, because you can afford to do things in a way that's easy for you, that's convenient for your design. You don't really have that convenience on any mobile platform, really, but especially on a mobile VR platform where we've got so much other things that you need to do beyond just rendering the cell phone screen. I've given a couple talks already at the app reviews and the start session. I'll go back over some of that work here, but and then I'm in the hallways to offer advice for the rest of the day. There are a checklist of things that you can start doing. If you take your Rift game, and if you're using Unity or Unreal, there's a decent chance you'll be able to click a little magic checkbox and have it compile for Quest. the odds of it actually running well initially are near zero. There's almost no application that was run on the PC that would come out and run properly on Quest at that point. But there are some applications that had a mobile-friendly aesthetic that could be brought over with not too much work, that came down to just making sure you're hitting the right buttons, turning the right knobs, doing the right settings. But unfortunately, most applications are going to require more surgery.
So it's not going to be easy to port.
Of the way you handle things, a rethink of what you're doing in the game, where if you take a game down to its schematic elements, you're looking at this action is producing this feedback and this response. Now, this feedback could be, you know, an immense particle system with dynamic lighting and fragment models spraying out. In a mobile game, that might turn into enabling one surface of a muzzle flash. But I have seen games that do this high-end, throw lots of particles and other stuff coming out of the front that are worse user experiences than just throwing the one flash of muzzle flash up there in the right position. So there's tons of wisdom in past generations of game devices. You know, if you go back to earlier generations like the PS1 or newer games like the Nintendo DS, these are games where people have done landmark games that people have loved for decades with far, far more limited power than what you've got with a Quest. So, I mean, we're talking tens of megahertz processors in some cases versus, we go well over a gigahertz on the processing rates here. So it's certainly possible, but many people that are into gaming in the last 5 years as developers have never had to exercise these muscles. Now, I always recommend that it's good for you to go ahead and learn about all of this, but the other option is to just find the right partners. Partner up the right game designers with the right technical people, and that's been a path to great success. It might mean expanding your team or forming different connections, but that's, in many cases, you'll have to do that to get the same, to not have horrible compromises made as you're bringing things over. So some of the things that just go right out the window is forgetting about any kind of dynamic shadow mapping. It's like, yes, it's possible to make it happen and work on mobile, but that is the last thing you need to be focusing on. If you need something to, say, give grounding to characters, blend a little blurry blob underneath them like games have done for so long. Shadow mapping is just one example of these secondary or tertiary rendering passes, which, again, it's possible. In almost all of these, there are all these caveats, like, yes, you can do a game that does this, but it's probably not a good idea. Learn the rules before you decide to break the rules here. Anything else that causes an additional render, certainly any dynamic environment mapping, but also many secondary screen renders inside environments. These are things that are going to, you will pay for them, trying to do them on the mobile systems. The first thing that I do when I look at an application for performance is I start a Snapdragon Profiler. Is usually my tool of choice, and it comes with a whole lot of caveats. It is not the most reliable piece of software because it has to work across, or it has to attempt to work across every different phone and tablet that uses that. So it's not specialized for anything, and it does have a tendency to kind of go up or down on different features across releases, but over the last 3 or 4 years it has had some solid positive improvements, and it pretty much mostly works for me on Go most of the time. So the first thing I do is I start that up, I run the application, get into some place in the game where it's not performing well, and I take a live trace and I look at how much the GPU is being used and kind of in what blocks. Because the first thing I look for is if you see multiple GPU blocks happening inside each frame. It's like, oh, they're rendering something off here. What is it? I can look through the other captures to try to find out what it is. But that's the first thing that you stop doing is get down so that you're passing one set of geometry through multi-view to generate your 2 stereo eyes. That's by far the best path, the path that you want to be on. The second thing that I start looking at is going over and look at the resources that are being used. A lot of times.
Oh, where's he gone? John.
Textures on mobile.
There it is.
This in the early days.
Don't worry, guys, it's back.
This was almost every application I was going through saying compress your textures, compress your textures. I've been happy to find it in recent years, like the last year or so, more often than not now, the Gear and Go developers have gotten the message and generally have the properly compressed textures. And that has helped a lot, but I'm expecting an influx of new Rift developers into this space that need to learn the lessons again, where you want to be using, on our platform, ASTC, texture compression. The default in many cases is ETC, which doesn't compress quite as well and doesn't have a lot of the flexible options. This is one of the great things about having a fairly constrained platform. If you're an Android developer, in some cases you would make 3 different sets of compressed textures. You'd make a PowerVR texture compression, one PBRTC, you'd make ETC, and you'd make ASTC. For Go and Quest, you just make ASTC. You've got a lot of flexibility there. Most people, I say, just pick the 4-bit per pixel one, like ASTC 6x6. It's equivalent to what you're probably used to with DXT or ETC, and it'll wind up looking better. But the better developers now are going through and making custom decisions on a per texture basis. Like this low frequency cloud thing can be 2 bits per pixel. This one shows artifacts. I want it to be perfect. I'll put this up to 8. So you've got a really nice granularity there with the slider.
See if you can make it louder.
There are some things that you just can't you just can't make work directly on Quest. Like a lot of the Quill illustrations where they've painted out these beautiful things like Dear Angelica or something that have tens of millions of triangles in some cases. And you just can't render 10 million triangles on Quest. The setup unit cannot do that many. You actually can render a few million if you're very careful and you do all the right formats and you set everything up correctly. But it comes back to, it's absolutely possible to capture that look and feel if somebody goes back in and knows they've got a budget, and a talented artist says, well, I've got this many triangles as my limit. You can capture basically the same thing. So much of Quill is about doing things very rapidly and fluidly, turning out something in a couple days that is this environment that would have taken far longer to model. But that trade-off, that convenience comes at this trade-off of it is not a very efficient use of polygons. Probably if we have medium model rendering or something like that, we'll have similar problems there. Now, unfortunately, we still aren't seeing massive wins that we kind of hoped for out of Vulkan as the API advancement. Part of that's because the multi-view for OpenGL was a huge win. It took us 2.5 years or whatever to get it really rolled through, but that made a big, big difference. It cut in half a lot of the software overhead for drawing the rendering. And while Unity and Unreal have Vulkan backends now that are much more efficient, they wind up coming through to about the efficiency of the multi-view right now. Now we're expecting soon to have a multi-view Vulkan extension that will bring that back down, hopefully get us to the point where, in theory, you can get about 2x improvement if you don't have much other software overhead versus the actual graphics APIs. But it's also taken us a very long time to get the interoperability between Vulkan and our compositor backend. So that's in theory working right now, but I don't think we actually have any shipped applications using it. We had a couple of brave developers that were volunteering to build a project with that, which will be an interesting but probably somewhat painful learning experience as we kind of find some more of the dark corners there. One of the things that Quest opens up that we haven't had really the ability to do before is because it has these 4 cameras on it that are used for the tracking of your head and the controllers. It also means that we can do things like pass-through video, where we had the pass-through on Gear VR originally, but it was a small inset window of like a 45-degree horizontal field of view, and it had a lot of latency to it, and it was not that useful. It took 1.5 seconds to start up, so the idea of having quick access buttons to use it wound up not being a particularly useful feature. But on Quest, the cameras are running all the time because they're doing the position tracking, so we can pull out the images from that, and we can do it at a fairly low latency rate. And we use this for the Guardian setup when you're kind of initially setting up your play space area and your safe space. Right now, we've got it doing largely a traditional pass-through, which can be disorienting because the cameras are not where your eyes are, they're down here. And that means that everything is offset a little bit, feels at the wrong scale. This is something a lot of people figured out in VR that you could use to an artistic advantage. When you change the interpupillary distance of the cameras, you change the perceived scale of the world, and it's the whole like Alice growing or shrinking effect, when you can make things feel like this is a tiny little model versus something enormous. And this winds up hurting even in some of the like the very high-end professional 180 video that's shot with like these big red cameras. They literally can't get them close enough together to have the proper IPD. So a lot of people have commented that it looks like they're tiny people. You know, everybody is
some stuff on the maze looks
like
like
they should be, because they were kind of taken from a wider view. But we have a lot of technology work
good quality
going on for ways that we can possibly make this more comfortable, where it's understanding the world more than just passing it through. And there's a couple different technology paths that we're looking at, some of which we're prototyping on more powerful headsets, but they rely on either finding features and getting depth from that, or looking at the video streams, kind of like the asynchronous space warp does, and taking motion vectors between them. And this is all bleeding edge right now and not guaranteed to be shipping, but that's something that may wind up improving the pass-through experience there quite a bit. We have another internal research project to try and do pass-through. What would be the best pass-through we could do if that was a primary goal, where it's clearly a secondary goal on Quest, where they are there for the position tracking and for the controller tracking, that we could use them for other things is sort of a side benefit. Although there is one aspect to that that I'm happy that I stood firm on at the beginning, where the initial thought was for maximum robustness in tracking and for maximum tracking of your controllers, you really would want all four of them pointing out at kind of pointing away from each other, because you can catch more of the wall over there. There's a lot of the robustness that we get with Quest compared to something like a Solo or some of the mixed reality headsets with two cameras, is that you can point at a blank wall and Quest will still work well because it's got other things pointing, you know, up and down in other directions. It's a trade-off. It costs more, and there's more complexity for doing the extra cameras. But the thing that I pushed for was making sure that at least two of the cameras covered in stereo the field of view that you can actually see. They're a much wider angle than the 90 to 100 degree field of view that you get in VR, but if we at least overlap them on that, then we've got this ability to do some of these depth estimations. And the other thing that we are working on internally is like native hand tracking, completely separate from the controllers. Right now, it's really slow. It takes a lot of computing power, but it's at least theoretically possible that we can make this work. It's unlikely to be a shipping feature on Quest, but we can use this hardware platform to start researching some of these things that future systems will have kind of the power and ability to do real time. So one of the other, of course, real benefits of hand tracking is the idea that you can use them in this emotive social way, that talking with your hands in meetings and social gatherings is one of the things that makes it so much more interesting than a kind of static fixed avatar.
Who does that?
And things like Spaces and a lot of the third-party applications have been working on this for a long time now. All the ways that, given that 6.6 positioning, that you can do really great things. And I had the argument with some of those people internally where many of them did have the view that it's just not worth even trying this on a 3.3 system like Gear VR or Go. And I think some of them have come around a little bit, and that venues and rooms are proving valuable for many people. But the 6.6 definitely lets you go the extra mile there. Now, with social obviously being a big focus, realistically, we've got the issues of concurrency and friend graph density and all of these things, but Facebook is all about connecting the world. That's the mission there. So it does mean I'm a little bit out of step sometimes as the champion of the power of isolation, where I really do think that one of the superpowers of VR is the ability to isolate you often from your environment. That I used to talk about it, how you're respecting your media when you are just in the VR space watching the screen and there's nothing else distracting you. or I say it's like headphones for your eyes, where if you're in a big, messy, open office situation, being annoyed by everybody, if you could put on a headset and be in a productive work environment that's peaceful around you, that there's real value there. And it turns out there's real value for that for training situations, where it is an issue getting people to pay attention a lot of times to things like safety briefings. And while people have immediately jumped to the clockwork orange vision of the peeled open eyelids of, you are forced to watch this, there are real legitimate values in putting somebody in an environment where they only have one thing that they can choose to concentrate on. And I do think that's going to be very important for education eventually. We are not making any great strides pushing forward with education, but I think clearly that's going to be one of the really important things that VR winds up making a difference on. I was in the last time I was out here for that offsite that I mentioned at the beginning, when I was flying back, I was in the airport waiting lounge, lots of people making lots of noise. I was annoyed. I put on my Go, and I was in my Netflix room, and I watched a show, and it was great. That is exactly what VR was supposed to be for. Now, of course, if you do that today in reality, you're sort of making a spectacle out of yourself. And it was true that on the airplane, I had brought it out again, and the person across the aisle said, "What does it look like in there?" And I wound up showing Henry and some 180 VR basketball footage, and they wound up going to Amazon on the airplane Wi-Fi and ordering a Go, like right there, which is pretty magical when you think about it. We really are living in the future that we can do this. So,
that's cool.
But still, we have marching orders that social is one of the most important things that we need to be working on. We need to be combating the isolation of VR. And we have a few of these wonderful asymmetric games, like Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes and Covert. That is a lot of fun to be able to play with one person looking at a cell phone, directing you, telling you to do something. But these are very specific niche games. Most of the content library doesn't have anything like that. But the VR mirroring, the new stuff, the casting to the phones and eventually to the screens, is going to be a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Really good.
It makes it so much more fun to have somebody using VR, even if
Go
you're
for
just
content
looking
creation
over
as
their
well.
virtual shoulder through the casting onto the screen. So I'm really excited about that. One of the interesting things that when we were discussing mirroring and some of the other things at one point, Narav had suggested that LCD screens for low-end cell phones are really dirt cheap. We could kind of put an LCD screen on the front of a headset, and it's like it would hurt nose thermal dissipation, and it's not. There would be challenges with that, but it's not a completely insane idea that you could have a VR headset that just is literally, you could maybe tap, turn it on or off to show what's there, show googly eyes or something, or some animation if you don't want the actual content shown. But the idea of trying to actively combat as a high order, as one of your real goals, saying we want to make this less isolating, we want to bring more people into it. So there may be something along those lines where the hardware actually starts changing. Another thing, we have been big on isolation. We've done a couple experiments where cutting things away so that I could see keyboards for desktop development, and then some people cutting everything away so that you can see all the way out to the side, so you can have VR down and be kind of side-eye having a conversation with a coworker next to you. So there may be other parts of the VR immersion space that are still valuable for different reasons. I did not get something I talked about last year a lot, was this social substrate of
no, you can't
VR
run this.
shell was originally designed so that any shell application you're doing would be immediately social, naively, without having to do anything. A lot of that work was ongoing sort of into Venues. Venues wound up being a fork of shell. Hopefully at some point we're able to merge them back together again, but development necessities and team dynamics wound up with that happening. But right now we are heavily focused on co-watching in TV, which is the first case of this is inside shell, it's the shell application. We're getting our act together with how do you nicely invite friends and avatars in and watch the same thing directly. And what I hope comes out of this, realistically, we can look at the numbers, this many people are going to use TV, we are going to do a bunch of promotional stuff around it. but the overlap between people, it's not going to be huge numbers of people that are simultaneously watching this. But if we can find the kernel of a behavior, a new behavior that people didn't have before, I think that like Go at $199 is cheap enough that I think we will find people that go out and buy a pair of Go's, not because they care about VR at all, but because they want to be able to do something with a loved one that's across the country. And this won't necessarily be a groundswell of people, but if this is an activity that you do for this reason, not because it's VR, not because you're into VR or a technology enthusiast, but because you do want to connect with someone else, someone that you care about, that you are physically separate from, that we can take this mantra of defy distance and give you that sense of social presence next to someone else and have an experience, a mundane, simple, watching television together experience, but with some feeling cool, that you look over and they're actually there. TV will be coming over to Quest as well, so you'll have the two hands for the better emotive gestures and all the different presence there, the better head movement and positioning. But it should also work out quite well on Go. That sense of being able to have the nicely spatialized audio, that sense that you are kind of right next to someone if everything is set up right. Now, that is another thing that technically that I think we can make some good progress on, and that's the voice latency across the social systems, where it's funny now that so many people are so young that they don't remember original local analog line phone calls where things were immediate and instantaneous, and how jarring it really was as people adapted to the latency in normal cell phone conversations. And we're in a position where we can probably make most VoIP conversations in VR across the internet much better latency than typical cell phone conversations, to give you a little bit more of that sense of immediacy and that you're actually there next to someone. One of the other big topics that I had last year was about all the different video work, and this is one that I'm honestly pretty disappointed that we weren't able to make more progress on really nailing and moving forward with immersive video. And a lot of it is because our relatively small internal media team, they just got pulled from project to project, where you can't work on Oculus Video anymore, you have to work on Oculus Gallery because we have no other way to see a lot of this media on Go. Now you can't work on Gallery anymore, you have to go work on TV because co-watching is our current strategy for pushing forward the social stuff. So for whatever reasons, we wound up not getting a lot of the things that I was excited about, like getting perfect frame releases, improving.
Oh, it's not me.
It took me a little while.
Oh, there you go. It's doing its loading thing again.
Something really gratuitous like black frames coming in on alternate frames or something, but it turned out that he really meant just that one of them was playing at 60 frames per second. That was a worst case video with lots of white all in the corners, but it was one of the people that was fairly struck by that. So that was an interesting thought, and now I'm uncertain about what the right thing to do there is, which means we'll probably wind up making it a setting where
people are sneaking away.
60 frames per second video, you absolutely want to be at 60 frames per second. You want it to be perfectly smooth because every little drop destroys that sense of immersion. Like, I look at this all the time. Yesterday at the main keynote, our $1 million production for all of this, they're showing the thousands of apps that are going by, smoothly panning, glitch, smooth glitch. And this happens across the highest level of professional video, but it matters much more in VR. I mean, yes, if it's just on the screen that you're looking at, people kind of with the latency on voice, people just kind of say, well, video's like that nowadays, but it doesn't have to be. We should be striving to be better. And 60 frames per second locked VR video is one of those magical things. It still has all the limits, don't turn your head like this, but when it's all done right, it is one of the very best things that that we can do. And that's one of the wins from this year was the 5K video streaming stuff, the view-dependent video streaming that I did for the Henry release. And my main goal on that was I'm always talking about it doesn't have to be like this or it should be better. So much of my duties are to provide these lighthouse experiences to show people VR Shell shows you text doesn't have to be unreadable. It doesn't have to be flickering, shimmering, and hard to read. You can do all of these things right, and it can look good. We don't need bigger displays or changes in GPUs or something. You just need to do it right. And this was the same thing on video, where videos do not have to be this kind of blurry mess that stutters and just looks terrible. You can have something that looks really, really good. And so Henry was basically doing everything right with this. 5K by 5K video, stereo, 60 frames per second, only possible with this extra bit of technology. And I was very happy that I was allowed to release this open source. This is something that I'm still grappling with a little bit, trying to make changes at Facebook, where Facebook is very serious about the responsibility of open source. They have hugely important projects like React that tons and tons of people rely on. So for the process, there is a many-page document about how to do open source at Facebook, which involves like who's signing up for maintaining this over all of this period of time, and who's going to be reviewing all of these different things. And I'm used to just saying, here's some source code, I hope it's useful for somebody. And it looks like the magic words for doing that is, it's not an open source project. This is example code that we can bundle with other things. So I think I'm working out the path to be able to do more of that, hopefully in the future. Because what I want to do is get this eventually on GitHub, where we can see updates. Because even since the Henry release there, I made some additional updates for the Jurassic World Blue release. Felix and Paul do some interesting technical things with that, where it's not just an equirect. If you notice, in most 3D videos, including Henry, you look down, and if you've got proper depth perception, it looks kind of like you're sitting in a giant bowl, that it goes off to infinity. Usually less of a problem for the skies, but you have to get rid of the depth below you, just because otherwise your eyes try to cross and go backwards when it sees past the pole. So Felix and Paul did something interesting in their presentation to avoid that, because you can look down at the ground on Blue, and it looks like it's at the right depth. So there were some changes along the way for there. Like Henry had everything fixed in this band in the middle, while we moved it down for Jurassic Park because more of the stuff is kind of below horizon level and the ground looks good. I know what I need to do eventually is write a real GUI tool that lets us adjust all of this dynamically, because I have Dear Angelica encoded on this, but we're not quite through the release process on this, and I learned even more with that, with all of the hard brush strokes that really showed out the transitions between the high detail and low detail. So I added some blending and blending in of the things so they don't pop in, and a bunch of these new lessons that I want to get out to everybody. But what I really want to do is have this so that a producer can go ahead and lay out the 360 and then lay out a timeline of the entire video. It's split into 10 slices. You should be able to kind of push those up or down to cover exactly the detail you want for everything. Now that's not something everybody's going to want to do, but I hope that every Felix and Paul video gets remastered like this, and for the amount of money that goes into those productions, spending a day kind of plus-minusing through all, getting the details in the right places is absolutely worthwhile. One of the other big wins on the video side for the post-Go launch was getting 5K video support on the Go, where for a long time now we've had, really since S6, or certainly since S7 for everything, we've been able to decode 4K 60 video, where you can do 4K by 2K 60 frames per second. Now, if you divide that out, it would seem that, well, that should also allow us to do 5760 by 2880 at 30 frames per second. It's the same number of pixels. Most things are kind of flexible like that. And in fact, the Exynos chipsets could do that, but the Qualcomm chipsets stopped at 4K maximum dimensions. So I had been kind of prodding the Qualcomm engineers about, can we do anything about this? It would really help some people doing professional video work. Some of the workflows from the cameras, this is optimal for our screen resolution. We didn't need to go all the way up, where the screen resolution optimal is only 5120 by 2560. 5760 is more than you need and can't even be a net negative even if you're throwing all the bandwidth at it. And eventually they came around, and it was kind of funny. I was throwing some quotes at them from people. I didn't realize there was this community where there are fanboy wars between chipsets on mobile phones, and I didn't realize that was a thing, but I would find Exynos people ragging on the Qualcomm chipsets about they can't even play these videos that I've been able to play for a while. And I brought all of those to Qualcomm's attention, and eventually they did. And it turned out to be more work than I thought. I had mistakenly thought that don't you just have to change a constant there, that I thought they were just saying, well, the spec only goes up to here, this is all we're going to do, kind of a conservative viewpoint, but they did actually have to re-architect some non-trivial things to make it work. But it does work, and it's out there right now. So you can play these. We have a quirky set of restrictions for the way this works right now. This new technology, this new limit was only unlocked for H.264. So if you want to play a 5K video, it means you want to be an H.264. H.265 can't play wider than 5K, but it can play taller than 5K.
Marcus.
So you get to the point, well, if you've got a
what's up, Marcus?
2-to-1 aspect ratio,
I thought I'd move within the people.
Can transpose it vertically and then
yeah,
like that.
The
Make sure the player has a little something different.
That was awesome.
I know, that was good.
Was that
a whole 1 second of fame.
It's possible to interleave frames on stereo instead of doing top, bottom, or left, right. If you do interleaved frames, H.265 especially, when you've got the very slow preset and it's looking across lots of frames for motion vectors, that gave a startlingly high compression ratio, like over 30% better, which is probably all you ever would have gotten with the old multi-view coding that was made for 3D TVs, which is not supported on the current chipsets. But no video player right now plays interleaved. You have to do some extra buffering and work through that, but that's an interesting thing. And one cool thing that was great for Henry and some of these other 5K high-quality things, we had an internal research prototype that was a Gear VR headset, but with some research lenses that gave it like 120, they were huge lenses, like 120-degree field of view that used, you could put in one of the larger Samsung phones that had the wider aspect ratio, and it would use all of the extra pixels there. And at first, when I heard about that, I thought that it would be bad because I thought, I know stretching the same number of pixels across the wider field of view really kills things in the middle and is bad for it. But the way the optics worked on this, the middle stayed about the same resolution. It just went all the way out to the edges and scrunched those pixels a little bit. And looking at these 5K videos inside that was pretty damn impressive. We showed that to Samsung as like, here's something that maybe we could consider this for a future device, but it would have more manufacturing challenges and so on. But it was great to see the high-end VR videos there. I am running out of time, so let me skip down.
Marcus, do you think we're going to hear? When do you think the pre-orders will go live?
One of the major projects that I did this last year was doing some work on.
I don't know. I imagine soon, surely. Because why not pre-order? Just don't take money straight away.
You can do it directly with Dash. You can do it to mobile with a number of different apps that have taken a stab at this. But it's really, at least for productivity stuff, every programmer say, I can't wait till I can do my VR. It's really kind of a gimmick thing, the way it's generally been seen. And the way
that'd be too early, though, wouldn't it?
Is that our current resolution in our systems, in VR Shell, we recommend.
I'm more excited for this than I was when I was 9 and getting an Atari 2600 for Christmas.
Where it's not curved, it doesn't fall off
way higher.
And if you run those numbers out, even a 1280 by 720 monitor is enormous.
Like what they said, that whoa.
You're spending all of your time
that whoa commercial.
side to side.
But that WoW commercial is geared towards me playing this day.
High-end research
absolutely. Yeah, that's what I say. Yeah.
To look at your keyboard, to be able to kind of see that, track other objects, track your keyboard and mouse through the VR display. But I have been saying for a long time, just let's cut out the bottom of it so you can look under, like I'm looking under my glasses right now. It's like, yes, sometimes you wish that you could look down straight through it, but you can get a lot done like that. And we've been talking about the future of work and the pitches that we should be doing as this strategic direction in the future. But eventually I said, well, I'm just going to go do this right
what's
now.
this guy doing?
We had somebody, some of our hardware people chop up a bunch of Go's. We tried a number of different things ranging from a small...
maybe we shouldn't look at him.
...to cutting away most of the bottom. And since then we've had people cut away everything so you could have the kind of co-work divisions. And then I started working on writing a custom application to do the remote desktop work. Oh, before that, one of the things that I did try that I'd been meaning to do for a while was seeing what we could get in terms of super resolution. Because the idea that the way desktop monitors work, LCDs, is you have red, green, blue pixels and high quality text rendering, like ClearType and other technologies like that. They wind up
rasterizing
things at this sub-pixel
So there's a camera here, and I use Visor to record the game, or use the actual in-game recorder.
It's really 3 times that in the
Has this guy not finished it?
And that does help pretty significantly with text rendering. So for a long time, I had been considering.
He's got some stamina, this guy.
That on Pure VR initially, and then Go. It's like, is there a 3x factor resolution that we can unlock somehow? And it turned out it can't really
It's obviously not very big.
like that for something that wasn't immediately obvious. Where for it to work out, you would have to have your chromatic aberration correction accurate to 1/3 of a pixel, or at least less than a pixel, for it to be valuable. Because if the pixels, the colors have spread out further over there, and you're saying, I'm expecting it to be here, but it winds up here, it's not really extra resolution. And while it's plausible that we could generate a correction
We'll go back to normal
that level of accuracy, the reality is
just for you,
people
King.
never put the headset on in exactly the same position. And while our chromatic aberration correction looks really good, it's a great improvement right now, it is not 1/3 of a pixel accurate. And you can see if you just move the headset around, tilt it around a little bit, things are moving around a little bit, you'll see a hint of a fringe coming on one edge, then the other. So that was not a key to new resolution, but something I learned that was completely new that I had never suspected was for my tests for this, I had a resolution chart, just things with expanding bands and horizontal and vertical lines. And I chose it so it was high enough resolution that it was aliasing pretty badly. So it had all the fizzly edges that I hate on things. And I noticed by accident that if I tilted my head, somehow it seemed to get very crisp and it lost the aliasing edges and it looked really good. Like, this is interesting. This is a novel effect. And I did some experimenting with it. And it does turn out that in many scenes that have like horizontal and vertical lines that are lining up with the display pixels, a lot of times the aliasing comes in from rasterizing to that, distorting it and then showing it at the screens. So in some cases there is a win to be had by rotating your eye buffers. And I considered maybe making this a default option, but for every rotation there's going to be something in the world that lines up with that and then shows what the current horizontal and vertical ones do. But there may be cases where this is an interesting technology that can actually have some value. But so I wound up not getting any spectacular wins for the resolution there. But I started off with a basic virtual desktop, kind of a VNC RDP protocol. I took my desktop machines, put it up in there, got the mouse cursor working, which was kind of interesting where when I first, you can plug in a lot of, you can get some Bluetooth mouse and keyboards to work. You can actually pair some of them through Twilight. It's hit or miss. We don't exactly have a list of supported devices. You can also take the little USB RF dongles and just kind of plug that into the micro USB and then use their keyboard and mouse. So there's a number of ways to get keyboard and mouse working. And with the cutout there, you can see it reasonably well. So I took the remote desktop and I did my normal kind of VR shell route of I put it on a nice cylindrical layer at the recommended resolutions. And it's enormous and I do some work going on. One of the first things I noticed was that while cylindrical curve works great for that axis, vertically it's still just a flat projection, and eventually you run out of resolution, but you also then start running into our limited distortion mesh, where you start seeing things get a little bit wiggly down at the bottom. And if you look really carefully, you can see this even in some conventional apps. Like, I've spent so much time in the Netflix scene that I noticed that the table in front of you with the magazines there, that's down near the bottom of my vision, as I move around a little bit, I can see the distortion kind of wiggling those pixels, but very few people will be able to notice something like that. It does show up also in equirect presentations where some of that, at a certain point, there's an area where you see those getting a little bit wiggly. So one of the things I had to do quality-wise to make the desktop work better was to increase the density of the distortion mesh, and that cleaned up the wiggles on there, and we'll probably make that some kind of a performance option, probably a flag on layers at some point for people to use. But the thing that was really important was giving up on this 13 or 14 pixels per degree and say, well, we've got, in my case, I was streaming like a 5K pair of desktop monitors. Let's go ahead and take all of that and let me shrink it down and spread it out and use some pre-filtering technology to say, we know what resolution it's going to be, we've got the high res, let's filter it down, not just with a mip-map where you're just factors of 2 and you're either too aliased or too blurry or blended between them, but to actually filter it correctly for the resolution that it was going to be. And then the key was having a really fast, expressive way of panning around this desktop. So I made it so that touch shift on the keyboard and I could move the mouse around and could pan the whole desktop around, and mouse wheel would zoom it in and out. So at that
he's
point,
got the 2 hours to himself, I think.
Work done. I would start the day, put on my Go, bring up Visual Studio and Eudora, and start working on Outlook and start working on things. And it was the first day I'm working on this, and 1 hour later, my eyes are just hurting. It's the strain of kind of looking at things at this distance, and it was bothersome. I found that if I pushed everything out to like 32 meters in the great distance, that worked a lot better, and I was comfortable for another hour. I got all of the desktop stuff so I could really do my work well. I was thinking some things, they're saying we're done. Right now? We can continue out in the hall. Anybody that wants.
I always run out of time. Oh, look, they cut him off. Oh, there you go. Just straight end. So it's only 7:30. So technically I thought he was going to have like another half an hour, but I guess they let him run the next 2 minutes. Oh, there we go. Well, that's noisy, isn't it? Can we get out of that? So what do we think then, guys? What do we think? Oh, look at my face. It's giving me like bags under my eyes. Look. So what do you think? So USB support for the Go, yeah, it's been confirmed. He said that he didn't give any specific dates on when that was coming, but it is coming. Well, the thing he did say was that the power gets low, there can be some issues with the USB sticks, and USB sticks drain a fair bit of power as well. So kind of bear that in mind. I guess they might put something in that maybe sort of stops it, USB sticks from working at a certain power level, just kind of avoid issues. Otherwise, people are going to plug them in and go, "Oh, this ain't working," and start complaining. Yeah, he never talked about Rift 2. Hello, Marcin 83, famous man. Yes, I was in the Oculus Go video for 1 second. That's me. I'll do autographs. That's fine. I don't mind. Might get myself a table at a Comic-Con so I can do some signatures. No, the USB won't be for apps. It will just be for media. It won't be for apps. Yeah, well, I'm surprised Apple didn't really mention anything about AR in their last. Did they mention much about AR in the last, when they announced the last phone? I don't think they did they? Or did they? Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did, didn't they? Because they had the whole game, they had the whole board. It was all. Yeah, they did, didn't they? Yeah. Yeah, so they're obviously deep into AR. Wonder if they'll ever make a headset. Do you reckon? By the way, any issues with charging Go during play mostly comes down to power bank. I mean, I've never really had any issues with charging and playing at the same time. I think it's more of a kind of safety thing, I think. Because if you're running around with a cable attached and you know, pull something off or get tangled or whatever, when it's not, obviously doesn't usually have a cable. Yeah. Your stream played up, did it, Oliver? It's, for the most part, that stream worked quite well, the venues thing. There's a couple of times where it paused. There's a couple of times where my streaming software kind of pauses and I have to click on it just to restart it. But overall, it seemed alright. How did it sound? Because I know some people are saying, can I make it louder? And I'll be honest, I'm using this microphone on top of my camera to do it. Although I say that my battery in my camera's about to run out. Oh, got to plug that in. I forgot to plug the camera in. So my actual face cam will probably run out of battery at some point. Well, at the moment, mine's plugged into the my PC, so technically charging, but it has been draining. So for an hour and a half, it's now down to 43% battery. So that's quite good for kind of how long it's been going. No, they didn't say when they were going to get streamed. They didn't give a specific date. So I like to think soon. He didn't sound like it was soon. The way he was kind of talking about it, it felt like it was still some weeks away. So we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully, we'll, you know, hopefully people will push for answers. Maybe I'll stick them a tweet or something. Maybe we'll get some answers. I'm very sure the people who are grabbing now in the corridors and stuff will be asking when are these actual features coming. So I know last time he mentioned about it on Twitter and stuff. He was sort of saying they take a lot longer to do than maybe what we think. So it takes a while to do. Well, so any other questions? Anybody else want to discuss anything before we end that here? If anybody's new to watching my channel, I do stream Oculus Go stuff quite frequently. I will be picking up a Quest as soon as they're available. I also do Oculus Go videos, so if you want to know about the latest releases, the apps and experiences that got released today, I've just released a video that covers those. I go through them, kind of give my opinion on them. I call one in particular trash, because it is trash, and it's the one you have to pay for, so I wouldn't recommend it. But, you know, I do various videos, little hints and tricks and tips and whatever. How are you streaming Keynote from your Go? So I've got, obviously, a face cam here. So this is my Sony AX53 camera. I use this in all my videos, just because it's so convenient and it's all auto, and you know, when you've got a headset on you don't have to think about it. And then on my PC I've got a program called Visor, and you can stream Android devices to it. So it's like streaming your phone to your PC. It does that. And then I'm basically sort of cropping one eye off, as it were, because it shows you both eyes. Hence why you can kind of see. I'll put this down for a second, I guess. You can see all the puppies. Can I put that down? I've got enough room on here. There you go. And you found me on Deco. What's that? What's Deco? I was hoping he would have given us some insight into what they were working on. Yeah, I think Carmack's kind of discussions has always been a bit more technical. It's interesting kind of see the kind of the process they go through, the thought process they go through, the discussions they have around the developing of stuff, and how, you know, he's obviously pushing certain things, other people are pushing certain things, turning people's opinions around, sort of thing. Yeah, there's a bit of discussion about Quest. I think it was kind of a flip between the both, wasn't it? I think he seems more impressed with what Go's achieved than maybe what Quest will achieve, it seems. Because, I mean, Go definitely has kind of busted its way into the market and doing a good job, isn't it? So, it's quite cool. I'm worried about my battery going on this camera. It's not gone red yet, so I think I've probably still got another 10 minutes or so. Are you found me on Discord? Yes. I have a Discord. If you go to discord.ramarcus.com, you can chat to me anytime. I'm there, full throttle. Who says that? That's Flossie Carter, if you ever watch his YouTube videos. Ding, ding. Power heads on. Oh, there was no mention of AR. So what did I see when there was... Was that not in Apple's Keynote? I'm sure. What was it? What I was watching then? Was it not Apple where they had the kind of table and then people were playing games with each other, or was that just a completely different keynote? Was that not the one that just happened? I'll be honest. I don't follow Apple as much as I probably should. I'm an Android guy, so although I do have an iPad, I'm an Android guy. I'll do Alt Space again another day, mate. Don't worry about it. Just seems like the only company we can trust to drop something aesthetically pleasing while integrating all the current apps. To be fair, I think, you know, to give Oculus credit, you know, that it's Facebook, whatever, but they could have easily charged 600 quid for the Quest, and they're going 400. You know, $400, 400 quid. That's just, you know, that's crazy. You know, they could have easily got away with 600. I think most people kind of would have accepted it, especially considering like the high focus or whatever. That's 600, 700 quid, isn't it? So that's not cheap. So they could have, you know, and this is technically better than that. Could have gone higher, and people probably would have taken it. But I guess they want to kind of make that market penetration. They want the adoption of VR, and I guess they kind of think that VR is more important than them making any particular profit, which is, you know, full credit to them for that. Yeah, that Lone Echo experience. I tried not to spoil it in the latest update video because it is really good. I'll be honest, I've not played Lone Echo. I'm sure I own it on Rift, but it's supposed to be a little bit of a spoiler sort of thing. But yeah, it's really good. It's like Henry, like Carmack was saying, that kind of super crisp 5K 3D 360 footage. Oh, it's good. It's worth watching. Definitely worth watching. Low power mode seems to be good. Yeah, low power mode is a good idea. I don't think it was anything I've ever kind of thought about, and people have obviously been asking for. Yeah. So the price of buying the Vive wireless adapter, you can buy a Quest, which is an all-in-one system. Yeah. I think the way Carmack was putting it as well, it didn't seem like. He kind of made it seem like there's a bit more of a gap between the quality of Rift games and Quest games. So whereas I think obviously people were talking about sort of this, I know there's like keynote sessions and stuff, isn't it? Talks about porting your Rift games over, but from the sounds of it, it's not an easy process as maybe they hoped. They've got like a system that does it, but 9 times out of 10, it's just not usable. But you know, I'd be interested to see what comes along. But even comparing to Go, like there's a game called Rush, isn't there, that's on the Oculus Rift and the Go. The graphic comparison between the two, was it you, PD, who has done the comparison video? Somebody's done it, hasn't they? And it's comparable. You know, you can kind of see that, you know, it's not worlds apart. Yeah, the chipset is an A35. Yeah, it's 835 chipsets has been confirmed. It would have been nicer if it was an 845 because it's meant to be like a 30% more power, but I guess it probably would be 30% more cost. Another 100 quid, another 150 quid maybe, so you know. They said soon with YouTube VR. I guess soon with everything, isn't it? Soon TM. That's the same as everything else these days. Your friend on Face Your Fears. Face Your Fears is good. I mean, it's on Rift, it's on everything, isn't it? But the experiences on there are good. It's like I've been playing some like new releases the last few weeks, and they've kind of been jump scare things, and they're just not the same as Face Your Fears. You know, Face Your Fears takes the gold standard. I think Face Your Fears 2 is being demoed, isn't it? At OC5. So if you're there and you can kind of demo the Face Your Fears 2. Yeah, yeah. So everybody check out Paradise Decay's video on comparing Rush on Rift and Go, because as I say, it's comparable. It's kind of, you know, clearly the Rift makes it look so much better, but gameplay wise and kind of, you know, for the most part, it's almost there. I don't know what the experience is at OC5 for Face Your Fears 2. I don't know what sort of thing it is. I did buy all of the Face Your Fears stuff the other week. I kind of intended to kind of do one at a time in a video, but I'm not a big sort of jump scare person, so I'm not sure people would be that excited to see me get jump scared when I maybe won't jump scare. I don't know. Maybe I'll try some. I don't know. Yeah, a lot of people do. Like that's that video, isn't it, where which I'm in. Well, I'm in the Oculus Go video, and there's people in there clearly being scared Probably buy Face Your Fears, I imagine, or roller coasters, I guess. But don't buy the new Roller Coaster Thrill ride or whatever it's called. What's it called? Roller Coaster Thrill? Something like that. The new game that came out today, the new app. Don't buy it. £2.29, $3 or whatever. Oh no, oh, not good. Pretty much pick up all the free stuff and just leave that one alone. Right, I think if everyone's finished asking questions, I think that's going to be me out before my battery runs out. I don't know whether I'll do an update video on the stuff that's been kind of spoken about. Nothing's kind of like, everything we wanted is coming, just no dates. So maybe if I find a date, I might do a video on it. But if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. You know, all that jazz. Become one of the Remarkables. Hit that subscribe button. I have a Patreon if you want to support what I do. That's great. Patreon.com/RaMarcus. I don't have anybody supporting me yet, but you know, it's there. It's there. I'm hoping sort of this time next year I'll be jetting off to OC6. I'll be covering whatever the new stuff they'll be doing there. Maybe Half Dome or Rift 2 or whatever it'll be. But we'll see. But thanks for stopping by, guys. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you found it interesting. Even if it was just me kind of just looking disgruntled with a headset squashed on my face. But hopefully this is useful for some people. So thanks for watching. That's me done. I'm out. I'll say I give you a virtual high five. There you go. And now I've got to turn it off because it's the same PC, the same screen. So here's the visor program that I use to stream the Oculus Go.